G'day guys, welcome back. My name is Wildkard. Thank you for watching the Wildkard Rugby Show. And yes, everybody knows, in the world of Australian rugby, there's nothing worse than losing to the Kanto Lickers from Queensland. Okay, now I accept this defeat, but let's talk about the scrum first. So yeah, what can I say? You know, when it comes to scrummaging, it's really important to understand the mindset going into this game. First time around, the Reds lost the scrum. Lots of wheeling coming from the loser side for the Waratahs, and as a result, the Reds was considered the favourites to win the scrum and lost it in the first match. And you know, the referee Paul Williams, you know, cosplaying as Nick Berry for some reason, really was calling the scrum penalty a little bit too early, in my opinion, in the first game. And the Waratahs really took advantage of that and got like a quick hit and then quick feed. Again and again and again to get that form of momentum going right away. And then leading to a lot of the calls going to their way almost immediately as the wheels started coming in from the loser side. I did talk about it in my review in that first game. I felt like the Waratahs didn't actually go forward enough to earn those penalties, but Paul Williams, role-playing as Nick Berry, thought it was good enough. This week, we've got Ben O'Keefe. He was definitely more strict in terms of the scrum interpretations, which I think is changes the dynamic a little bit as well for both teams. The Reds definitely come in and try to minimize that hit advantage from the Waratahs on the get-go. You can see the first few scrums, the scrum was pretty much pre-engaged, right, before the referee even called engage, and resulting in a lot of resets. And also, it was pretty obvious at times, not obvious, it was pretty cheeky at times, the Reds just bringing the scrum down after the hit. If they felt like they've got the shorter end of the hit from the engagement, right, and the referee did penalize them a couple of times for that as well. But overall, I thought the Reds managed it quite well. All right, unlike the first game where they just got penalties piled up against them a number of times. This time, he really made the scrum a much more closer contest. In fact, the Reds found themselves in situations where they were given the advantage from the scrum there as well. I do think that Ben O'Keefe interpretation of the scrum is probably the most standard, like probably the best in the world right now, because he really was there was times where sometimes you see the scrum, right, one team will be going forward, and then the team that's going forward, one of the props or hooker pops their head out. Right, and a lot of times, in fact, pretty much every time, the team that's going forward always gets the penalty, right? Because you're going forward, you're asserting dominance. Yes, your head popped out first, but you are still giving the benefit of the doubt as the dominant team. Ben O'Keefe in this game actually penalized the Reds for popping. I think it was Tumanga Allen. Maybe it was Nongo for popping out his head first, despite the fact the Red scrum was going forward. So yeah, it's definitely, strictly speaking, that is how the scrum is supposed to be judged. The person that pops their head out first should be penalized, regardless whether or not the scrum is going forward in your favor or not. So I think the interpretation there for the Ben O'Keefe was good. And also early in the game, in the first scrum, I thought surely was a Waratahs penalty right away forward, and then both teams kind of stood up at the same time, and Ben O'Keefe said that wasn't enough for dominance to get the penalty call and reset the scrum a couple times after that. So I do think that Ben O'Keefe has a pretty good interpretation, and I do appreciate that he kept the contest happening overall. And overall, I thought the Reds did really well to minimize some of the advantages that the Waratahs had from the first game, and then just did what they needed to do to not concede a bunch of penalties, and did what they needed to do to find to whether it be collapsing the scrum, you might say, or illegally, and then whether it's just to readjust the body position in terms of the post engagement pressure, whatever they did enough to not be to be a massive improvement from that first outing against the Waratahs. Now, in terms of the game plan, I thought the Waratahs maybe had looked at some of the stats and felt that the holding on to the ball was the best way to go about at it. In fact, I know some people might criticize Waratahs for holding on the ball for too long and not doing anything with it and just kind of like one-dimensional. Yes, I agree. They probably could spice things up a little bit. We'll talk about that in a second. But I do think that giving the ball to the Reds was probably deemed more dangerous than just holding onto the ball and not do anything with it. Because we saw at the end of the game how quickly the Reds opened the game up, how quickly the counter attack came through from Carter Gordon, basically getting 2 tries, almost just from back-to-back tries. Not back-to-back, but getting the last 2 tries basically from pressure and from defensive errors out of the Waratahs, just by having the ball, just attacking with the ball essentially. And I think that Waratahs maybe felt like kicking the ball away, especially in the back line. You look at Dalgunu, who basically opened out the defense at the end. Maybe the back line like Dalgunu, Junkyard Dog, and who else do they have? And Carter Gordon was just too dangerous. Kicking the ball to them was just too dangerous for the counter attack. And I think that maybe that's the reason why the Waratahs wasn't comfortable in terms of kicking the ball away, which I can actually get behind that if that was logic. But on the other hand, what they did with the ball was really less than desirable, in my opinion. If you want to just run the ball, which is nothing wrong with it, it is literally a Super Rugby winning strategy, right? The Blues literally just had forwards pick and drive and won the Super Rugby like 2 years ago, right? Without Burton Barrett. So it's definitely not a bad strategy to just keep holding on to the ball and just build like 15, 20 phases. I don't mind that. And I think that if that's the direction they wanted to go, especially if they feel like they are, outmatched from the counter attack, without Swali'i, maybe having having a bunch of youngsters, 21-year-olds as outside backs, making the coaches feeling a little bit sweating in the coaching box. Maybe that's why they want to keep the game a bit tighter. You can do that, but the dynamic needs to be changed. It's the changing in dynamic, changing speed. That's where it's dangerous. And the Waratahs, I didn't even see that many pick and goes. It was very predictable, slow ball, and just 15, 20 phases on repeat. It just wasn't gonna work, right? And if you look at what the Blues did, that was really, really successful. Is they actually brought in their wingers, right? The Blues had like 4 wingers, right? Like Riku Ioane, AJ Lamb, Caleb Clark, and who else? They literally had like 4 wingers on the field, and then they just have Martalea, literally 4 wingers on the field. And what they did is they actually brought the wingers in as basically a forward to pick and go. All right, we saw players like Mark Talea picking and going and scoring tries like a forward. And then they also had, instead of having a forward as that crash option at 12, they actually had a winger as well, swooping in, maybe coming around for the blind side, just crashing into the 12 position, just to speed the things up, and then follow that through with a bunch of forwards pick and go to get that forward momentum rolling. I think the Waratahs, maybe that's the game plan they had, just didn't quite get that rolling the way they wanted to do. And obviously it requires a full court pressure from your whole team instead of just a couple forwards trying to get behind, trying to push themselves with leg drives to get behind the advantage line, and then try to get a bit of forward momentum going through sheer forward power, right? Sometimes you got to change that dynamic to actually get the forward momentum, to actually create something in front of you, to make a defense force the defense to do something, to get out of line a little bit, to get yourself that little bit of forward momentum there. So I don't disagree with the decision. I do think that the execution needs to be a little bit better, and especially I think that based on how quickly players like Dalgunu counter-attacked and how dangerous Junkyard Dog looked and how dangerous Carter Gordon looked, it really does make sense to not kick the ball away, to just give the Reds open field to try to counter-attack against your defensive line. Now for the Reds part, they did a lot of kicking, right? I'm going to talk about this in my England review later tonight, so if you want to listen to more, I did a lot of research about playing the spreadsheet. I do think that the Reds may be playing the spreadsheet a little bit when it comes to those kicking game. And I will talk about, I'll talk about it in the England game, but sometimes basically if you only, focusing on playing the spreadsheet, you end up in a situation where you actually starting hurting yourself, your team, right? We may saw a little bit of that because yes, on the spreadsheet, it is good to kick the ball, right? Just outside the 22, because that is, where the most opportunities are made and most advantageous to your team. That is, you can look at a stat and say, whenever the ball goes, whenever, if you get a turnover in this area, you're very likely to score, right? You can look at a lot of different stats that tells you kicking the ball to just outside the 22 and up and under just outside the 22, a contestable up and under just outside the 22 is a really good idea. But as we saw tonight, Carter Gordon hardly got the ball. And when he did get the ball, he scored, right? So again, are you playing the spreadsheet to the point where you're actually not utilizing your best opportunities that's right in front of you, and that is Carter Gordon outmatching everybody that's in front of him, right? So that's kind of like I'll go more into detail because I looked at how this is played out in basketball, where nowadays basically every team just trying to throw 3 points to the point where nobody's actually getting anything done. So or getting very little effectiveness, the efficiency for 3 points just getting lower and lower and lower to the point where everybody's questioning, is this still like the right direction to go? And I think that the Reds playing the spreadsheet, England Rugby undoubtedly will do that again tonight. It's starting to actually hurt them in terms of just playing what's in front of them, what is in front of them in terms of the mismatch that is already in front of their face, right? So with that being said, I do think that Riley at outside center was quite decent. He really read the defense quite well. The rush defense coming up really shut down a number of the Reds' attacks quite well. I do think that his outside players were disconnected at times, and if he rushes out and he doesn't shut down the ball where he is, at the 13 channel, then if the ball goes out wide, then suddenly the Reds breaks through. And in fact, we saw that when Campbell got the ball, he didn't quite got the ball beyond the 13 channel, and he just ran behind Riley essentially and went through and made a massive line break, in fact leading into a Carter Gordon try. So I do think that Riley has done a pretty good job to be caught in to feeling, obviously, last week Tooman caught up 20 minutes and then to be fed into the Lions den against the All Blacks center combination was absolutely brutal. But this week I thought Riley did a pretty decent job in terms of picking up the ball and keeping the wheels moving forward without too much of an issue there. So I'm pretty happy about that. But I do think that the bench was, especially, I don't know if Harry Porter is the right person to be coming off the bench. I really felt like maybe another center to become, but then again, do you even have another center? Maybe Callaway or something coming off the center. I do think that's like another center to come onto the field to really bolster the center field defense would have been a better option, because towards the end of the game, the fatigue kicked in, and then we just saw a lot of open space just in the middle of the field because people were just off their feet and just cannot keep up with the energy that is, the fitness that is required to finish the game. And I do think that maybe have a center come on the bench could be a better play here for the Waratahs to finish off the game strong, especially if they want to play the forwards, holding onto the ball, 15-20 phase style, continual pressure. I really think that, definitely having like maybe even an extra flanker or something coming off the bench to really bolster some of that center field defense will be a better option to go like a 6-2 setup with a hybrid, flanker. Will be probably just give that bit of an energy boost in the midfield will be something that I think would do wonders for the Waratahs going into the last 10 minutes or 15 minutes or so. So, yeah. Outside of that, the Lionel Moore, one part I thought was really smart. There was one part where in the second half, the Waratahs had the line out and they set up for a Moore, and nobody from the Reds team engaged. And then Salakai Loto just ran in from the side and grabbed the ball carry out at the end of the Moore, and then just like held onto the ball and tried to kill the ball. And then the referee said he was actually okay. And then his teammates joined in from the side, causing the penalty, right? So I really like that play, because it shows that the players understand the rules of the game and then really try to exploit, I guess, the Waratahs just defaulting into setting up the Maul, fitting the ball back before the Maul's actually even formed. So, but the actual correct play in that situation is actually let the Waratahs don't engage like you did, and let the Waratahs feed the ball back, and then just bump the players in, at the front of the Maul, at the front of the Waratahs setup, because that's obstruction. You cannot feed the ball back before the Maul is formed. So Salaka Loto should have done is run in front and bump the players in front who did not have the ball and got a penalty right away. So I think that that's really smart play, but I do think that a better execution in that situation is to just bump the players in front and get the penalty to your favor right away. But I do like the logic there from the Reds, brain trust in terms of that play. outside of that, I think that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about. Yeah, so let's have a look at the match stats of the game. The Reds, 4 tries, the Waratahs, 3. 405 run meters for the Reds, the Waratahs, 403. 141 carries to the Reds, 90. So carry per meter is a lot lower. The Waratahs really inefficient in some of the carries, to say the least. For defenders beatings, lower as well, 19 to the 22 for the Reds. 20 turnovers conceded for the Waratahs to the Reds, 12. Both teams were a bit sloppy, lots of forward passes and a bit of a knock-ons left and right. 81 tackles made for the Reds, 19 missed tackles. 104 tackles made for the Waratahs, 22 missed tackles there. Kicks in play, 27 for the Reds, 26 for the Waratahs. 1 conversion missed from the Reds, 2 conversions missed from the Waratahs. 629 kick meters from the Reds, 606 for the Waratahs. So not too crazy in terms of kick meters. Sometimes, you see the England team will kick like over 1,000 kick meters. Neither of the teams got even close to that, which shows that the kicking was more strategic than just punting the ball down the field. The lineouts, 14 lineouts for the Reds, 1 loss. 14 lineouts for the Waratahs, 2 loss. Not too bad in both teams. Both teams heavily contested those lineouts as well. 8 scrums for the Reds, no loss. 6 scrums for the Waratahs, no loss there as well. Penalties conceded. 12 penalties conceded for the Reds against the Reds. 5 against the Waratahs. So really, really well done for the Waratahs. And that's what happens when you put sustained pressure on the opposition, right? Not only that you're going to get the penalties, but you are less likely to concede the penalties. So yeah, that is one big bonus with the strategy that the Waratahs are pursuing. I just think that the execution is not quite there. Now I know some of you guys can say, "Wow, look, 12 penalties, could have kicked a bunch of those and probably won the game." Now, keep in mind, if the Waratahs, a lot of the penalties were back-to-back penalties because the Reds were under pressure and under the pumps, right? If the Waratahs hasn't applied sustained pressure, first of all, the Waratahs can give away more penalties themselves. Second of all, the Reds would not have conceded so many penalties. If the Waratahs taken the 3, a number of those penalties would not have happened because the pressure would have been taken off and the subsequent penalties would not have occurred. So it's not fair to say that the Waratahs would have won the game. They just kicked, let's say 7 penalties in their own half and kicked all of them. They would have won the game, or like most of them would have won the game, because most of them would not have occurred if they didn't put the sustained pressure against the Reds. So a lot of people have that misconception. I just like to clarify that for this time around. So yeah, let's have a quick point summary of the game. So yeah, there was some early scrums after the Waratahs should have won. Did not happen. Already showing the difference interpretation for the referees. It took about 6 minutes for the Reds to get the first try on the board. Carter Gordon got the ball midfield, put a wobbly bomb into the 22, right down the middle of the field as well. He kind of missed everybody and he bounced and he went, and Campbell got the ball and he ran through and he passes the ball. As he's getting tackled, he passes the ball to King Wilson. Passed to King Wilson, who ran in for the try. 7 points to 0 for the Reds. 16 minutes into the game, the Waratahs had a penalty. They did not kick 3. They went for the line out. They had a Maul going, and then they went to the short side and nice little pass into the short side. Didn't quite get there, and then a couple of pick and goes, and then eventually Adamson, the number 7, replaced what's his name, Charlie Gamble. Gets in for the try. 7 points to 7, and that's the halftime score. Nobody was able to score after this. Lots of knock-ons, lots of good scrummaging, and then the no one was able to get the any points before halftime after that. So second half starts. 56 took 56 minutes before more points were scored, and then suddenly the game just completely opened up. Maybe because of fatigue, maybe because the reserves came on, whatever the reason. But yeah, so there was a scrum penalty to the Waratah, and then they, instead of kicking for 3, they went for the line out, and then this was a weird one. This was where the Reds looked like they had a dominance, and then it stood up on the tight hair side, I think, and then the referee penalized the Reds, despite the fact that Reds looked like they were the ones going forward. But they went for the try. They went for the line out. The Waratahs went for the line out. They went for the Maul, and then Moananu went in for the try. 12 points to 7 for the Waratahs. 64 minutes into the game, the rush defense from the Waratahs got a little bit disconnected. Riley went up. The play shut down the player at, I think it was Carter Gordon, but he shut down the play in front of him, but the ball was still passed along over the top to Jock Campbell, and the player outside of Riley wasn't able to keep up with stay connected with the rush defense, allowing Campbell to run basically behind Riley through a little gap. And then there was a lot of, passing back and forward. There was a ball over the top. Harry Potter tried to intercept the ball, and he passed the ball back to his own side. The ball bounced towards his own goal area, and then Carter Gordon ran up, scooped it up, went in for the try. 12 points to 12, 64 minutes into the game. After this one, After this one, the ball went, the Waratahs was once again just building a lot of faces. The ball went out to Jorgensen. I'm very surprised the Waratahs didn't set up any of the high balls they did like before for Jorgensen to chase down. Like I said, maybe because they felt that the Reds was too dangerous in counterattack. But Jorgensen got the ball down wide. He kicked the ball over the top, and then as everybody was chasing the ball down, the ball was kind of like bouncing the ground, right? And then instead of trying to scoop the ball up, Jorgensen did one of those sliding soccer kicks and just punted the ball forward into the end goal. And then Harry Potter was just there, scooped the ball up, grounded it for a freebie. 17 points to 12. The Waratahs get themselves back ahead. 70 minutes into the game. This is what I was talking about. This is probably why the Waratahs did not do more kicking. The Harry Potter got the ball and he punted the ball down the field. Not even the middle of the field, near the sideline. The Reds got the ball, threw the ball out to the midfield, and then Dalgunu looked up. There was just a huge amount of tired bodies pretending to be defending, essentially. Ran right through the middle of the field, and they linked up with Henry, who ran through for a try. 19 points to 12. The Reds gets ahead by 2. After this one, it looked like Riley scored for the Waratahs. He grounded the ball on the line, past, on the sideline in the in-goal area. So yeah, no try, just literally like a centimeter could have got this one. No try for Riley. And then after this, 74 minutes, I think there was about 40 meters out. It's a nice little switch play, and Carter Gordon just looked out in front of him, seeing a bunch of tired bodies, and just ran through like a massive gap in front of the Waratahs defense. And he ran like 40, 50 meters, went in for the try. Eddie Jones' favorite son probably won the game for the Reds, just like it did last week against the Brumbies, single-handedly winning the 2 games in a row. Carter Gordon, that is quite impressive. I'm pretty happy that he's finding his strides at the Reds. So yeah, he got through there. 19 points to 26. And just before full time, the Waratahs tried a last-ditch effort to try to get themselves back onto into the game. There was penalty advantage. I thought there was penalty advantage, and then there was the Waratahs tried to spread the ball out wide. At this point of the game, it did look like the Waratahs had a bit more depth in their attack, and Junkyard Dog just knocked the ball forward. Should have been a yellow card. And the referee just said, "Yep, advantage over." So no advantage. Come back for the penalty. No yellow card. I felt like if that was a yellow card there, the Waratahs probably could have, may have scored one at the end there. Whether they're going to win the game or not is a question, but could have probably got one through at the end there. But yeah, deliberate knock-on was not called, but regardless, the Waratahs wasn't able to execute, and the Reds held out a final push from the Waratahs. 26 points to 17, leaving the two sides 1 game each this year. And yeah, let me know your thoughts about this game. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and do the Six Nations tomorrow. And yeah, tune into that and have a good weekend. See you guys later. Cheers.